here's what the creationists do about the facts. First thing they'll do, they'll say it's just microevolution. Now, I teach evolution. All right? I never talk about macroevolution because, in fact, macroevolution are one and the same thing. Give enough time, you can turn anything into anything. Yeah, it's true. It's true. All right. It's proven. You have the fossil record. It shows all the steps. All right, so what the creationists do, they'll deny the existence of tens of thousands of transitional fossils. Go to a museum, look at the fossils yourself. They're there. First of all, fossils don't prove evolution. Okay? The fossil record is consistent with a story, a historical pattern. It's proven. You have the fossil record. It shows all the steps. Fossils don't prove evolution. And that's exactly what paleontologists work at.
The fact that it's losing its legs and turning into a whale is not really, that's still an example for evolution.
Yeah, okay, you can't go backwards.
You can't go backwards?
You can't go backwards, because there's no backwards.
There's go backwards for evolution.
Right. Okay, there's no forward.
There's no forward, there's no backward. There's everything stays the same.
It's change.
You're a creationist, man. Everything stays the same.
But now if you find many fossils in the dirt,
It's not
the fact that you find millions of fossils in the dirt,
that's proof of a flood.
now that's millions. That's millions.
We have a very good set of bones saved from fossil records showing that the whales evolved through a long period of time from animals that were on land to animals that are in the water. We have that evidence. And to say we don't have it or to say that we're lying is disingenuous to this audience.
I don't know if I can help if you can't get this, but no fossils count as evidence for evolution. Well, first place, there's not enough to tell what it is. Secondly, you don't know that that is the ancestor of anybody. You don't know that that animal had any kids that lived. It is absolutely impossible to use any fossils at all as evidence for evolution. And anybody that's telling you fossils are evidence for evolution, you talk about voodoo science, that is it, folks, okay? We know these bones produce something other than their kind. Even though no animal today can do this, these bones were able to do it. That's absolute voodoo science. That's a good word. I got to use that one from now on. I appreciate that, okay? And if those bones don't have dates on them, they don't come with a little tag saying this one evolved into this one. All you do is put your preconceived evolutionary imagination idea on top of these fossils that are found.
Fossils don't mean anything as far as evolution is concerned. We don't need them. We got all the evidence we need to prove evolution without fossils. Forget fossils. They just aren't important. What's important is DNA. We have a very good set of bones saved from fossil records showing that the whales evolved through a long period of time from animals that were on land to animals that are in the water. Fossils don't mean anything as far as evolution is concerned. We don't need them. And to say that we're lying is disingenuous to this audience.
And evolution, regardless of what Dr. Hovind says, is very much a part of that tradition. We are constantly revising.
Tradition? You don't have to trust tradition. I mean, come on, there's different traditions all over the world. But we can trust science because science should be the same all over the world.
You start from very simple life, and eventually you get everything that we have around us, from elephants to alligators to chimpanzees and everything in between.
According to Chen, the fossils he's discovered turned Darwin's tree of life upside down.
Darwin's tree, reverse condition, very unexpectedly, our research convincing major phyla starting down below at beginning of Cambrian. Base is wide, gradually narrow. So this is almost turned on differently.
Hi, Dr. Hogan.
Hi, I forgot your name now. What is it?
My name is Michelle Markstein, and I'm a postdoctoral fellow here in the Integrative Biology Department. I have a PhD in genetics.
Here's an interesting fact. If you take and look at what's inside that banana and those dogs, they're awfully similar.
Now, do you believe dogs are related to bananas?
Ultimately, yes.
Ultimately, yes. Okay. You're saying, as a postdoctoral fellow.
There you go. But you don't need to say doctor in front of my name. I'm pretty secure about it. If God decided to use a mechanism of evolution to create human beings,
you look nervous.
to say that was a bad thing to do it.
It's okay.
You know why I'm nervous? Because I don't have the rhetorical skills that you do.
No. I am winning this argument because I'm right.
No,
Does that prove common ancestor, or could that prove common designer?
That's where you're wrong. I think it does not prove conclusively. It supports the view of common ancestry.
Why doesn't it support the view of common designer?
Well, why would it support the view of a common designer?
Well, why do all motorcycles made by Suzuki, Honda, and everybody else have 2 wheels, and all cars have 4 wheels? It's a common design.
Machinery is a horrible example. This has nothing to do with living things.
Okay, but my point
explain to me what this has to do with a common designer, because I really don't get it.
I'm sure you don't get it, but I'm going to try to help you.
The similarity between a Honda Prelude and a Honda Accord are pretty striking.
Yes, they're from the same maker, Honda.
You got the point. You got the point.
I do get the point. I believe in Christ. I believe He created certain things, but
you believe it's possible that wait. You believe it's possible that humans and apes have similarities because they simply have a common designer. Is that a possibility? That they're not even related, they're just the same guy designed them all.
That can be a possibility, yes.
What evolution do we have? What can we see? What examples do we have of evolution, regardless of the conditions, fast or slow? Please name your best one.
Well, we talk to the fossil record, right? We talk to the obvious existence of extinct and ancient life forms that have all the appearance, unless you believe a very complicated conspiracy theory, they have all the appearance of being millions of years old, right?
So the fossil record, the more we fill it in, the more complete it becomes and the more powerful it becomes as evidence for evolution.
Fossils don't prove evolution.
Fossils don't mean anything as far as evolution is concerned. We don't need them.
If people have lower back pain, that would not be proof of an ape-like ancestor, and that would be the opposite of evolution.
No, it would not be the opposite.
Yes, it is.
I would love to explain why it's not.
Okay, where's an example of where we're gaining something new?
We're gaining the ability to walk on 2 legs and thus have 2 appendages for each of those things.
Who taught you that? And why did you believe it? I didn't teach you that. No. I gotta come here more often. That's just what I need. Okay. I'll come here as often as you can find somebody to debate me, brother. You can call me. I'll come.
You all know that evolution argues that we share a common ancestor with the great apes, the chimpanzee, the gorilla, and the orangutan. Well, if that's true, there should be genetic similarities, and in fact there are. So we have 46, they all have 48. That's very interesting. I would say I believe in a designer, but you know what? I don't believe in a deceptive one. I don't believe in one who would do this to try to fool us. And therefore, I think this is authentic, and it tells us something about our ancestry.
Number of chromosomes is an interesting study. It is indeed true that chimps have 48, humans have 46. Tobacco also has 48. Amoebas have 50, and they say we came from an amoeba, yet they've got more chromosomes than we do. Chickens and dogs both have 78. They're identical twins. The fern has the most chromosomes. That's the ultimate goal of all evolution, to become a fern. So the similarities, I think, are evidence of a common designer.
We haven't absolutely proved it yet. We haven't absolutely proved anything.
I ask you, don't believe me. You don't have to believe me. You don't have to believe him. You don't have to trust authorities, even me.
I would encourage you students to open your mind just a little bit and think about possibly, it could be, just like when people were taught the earth was flat and later they found out, oops, that's wrong. And somebody taught, oh, well, big rocks fall faster than little rocks because Aristotle says so. That was taught for 2,000 years and it's wrong. And some of you are being taught in this university that you evolved from a rock 4.6 billion years ago. Well, it's wrong. You were designed by an all-wise, super-intelligent creator who loves you and would like to forgive your sin and take you to heaven, but if you want to go to hell, that's your business, okay?
Millions of years ago, on a beautiful island, in the middle of a jungle, there was a habitat teeming with life. In a small pool of water, there lived a very happy and loving family of fish. Every day in the life of this family was filled with fun, swimming in the warm, clean waters and eating plenty of fresh food. There was never a dull moment for this family. Until one dry season, when the water in their pool began to evaporate. Day by day the water withered, and there was no sign of rain in the sky. The family was scared and panicky, as they knew that the ultimate end of their species was upon them. Just when all hope was lost, a young, healthy fish cried out for their attention. They looked over at him and saw something they had never seen before. For this fish had the genes to grow legs and walk on land. No longer would he be bound by the water, limited by its shrinking state. He was going to walk on land. And as he took his first few heroic steps on dry ground and his first breath of air, he suffocated.
Nuts.
But luckily, there was another fish with legs who also had the genes to breathe out of water. He then turned around to wave goodbye to his dying family when he was burned to death by the scorching sun. Yet another fish came along with legs and lungs, and the scales on his back were tough as stone, which no sun could scorch. He traversed the land determined to survive, but his weak eyes failed him, and he fell down a hole and died. Another fish came, who was lucky enough to have been born with all the previous fish's genes. Plus, he had a gene that gave him perfect vision. He used his superior sight to find food, but no food existed on land that could be digested by his stomach, and so he starved to death. The next fish stepped up with an advantage over the others. He had a stomach fit for land food. One day, as he grazed on the fresh food, he fell victim to a larger, more fit land animal who made a meal out of him. The fish after that, along with all the previous genes, was endowed with a gene to make him larger and less eatable. He used his size to climb his way to the top of the food chain, where he lived for a long time. He lived life to the fullest and grew old. He had been naturally selected over all of his lesser fit brothers to survive, but without a mate to help pass his genes on, the fate of his species came to an end as he lay on the ground waiting for the maggots to decompose his filthy remains. Will not another fish come and save this species? Yes! Just then, a better fish than all who preceded him came equipped with so many genes that there was nothing on dry land that could bring him down. Plus, he had a wife. So he and his wife bore children and lived for a long time. When finally, the rain began to pour again, the fish was so excited, he gathered all his children and wife and jumped into a pool, where they all drowned.
So you get the picture? The creatures like Lucy have the ape orientation of the iliac blades. Now what are the evolutionists going to do about that? You're not going to believe this. Nova, have you heard Nova? There was a PBS Nova series in which Dr. Owen Lovejoy, a very distinguished, famous paleoanthropologist, was involved. And he's looking at Lucy's skeleton here, and he's lamenting the fact that the hips are all wrong. They're supposed to be human-like hips, so you can walk the way the Latoli footprints showed she walked, but they don't look like human hips, they look like ape hips. What to do about this? Watch it. You'll get a big kick out of this.
The ape that stood up, it was a revolutionary idea. We needed Owen Lovejoy's expertise again, because the evidence wasn't quite adding up. The knee looked human, but the shape of her hip didn't. Superficially, her hip resembled a chimpanzee's, which meant that Lucy couldn't possibly have walked like a modern human. But Lovejoy noticed something odd about the way the bones had been fossilized.
When I put the two parts of the pelvis together that we had, this part of the pelvis has pressed so hard and so completely into this one that it caused it to be broken into a series of individual pieces which were then fused together in later fossils.
So you see they were broken and they don't fit together properly. They did speculate in the program as to exactly who was responsible for breaking the hip, and current scientific evidence suggests perhaps a deer stepped on it. Here you can see a deer foot stepping on the bone. Isn't that a bummer? Let's see where it goes from here.
This has caused the two bones, in fact, to fit together so well that they're in an anatomically impossible position.
The perfect fit was an illusion that made Lucy's hip bones seem to flare out like a chimp's. But all was not lost.
This is a power saw, friends. You may want to put your goggles on.
Lovejoy decided he could restore the pelvis to its natural shape. He didn't want to tamper with the original, so he made a copy in plaster.
Notice he's removing whole parts, not just cutting.
He cut the damaged pieces out and put them back together the way they were before Lucy died. It was a tricky job, but after taking the kink out of the pelvis, it all fit together perfectly, like a three-dimensional jigsaw puzzle.
Look how perfect! You can read a newspaper through the hole.
As a result, the angle of the hip looks nothing like a chimp's, but a lot like ours.
Yeah, now, this is what we call science. You can teach this in the public schools, but you can't criticize it, because if you do, that would be religious. So, well, I think perhaps the best way to...
Today's paleontologists are starting to explore radically new clues from dinosaur skeletons. Christy Curry Rogers cuts into their bones to examine the pattern of what was once living tissue.
And is it sort of like CSI for dinosaurs?
It can be, sure. Sometimes it's kind of a different method of detective work. We can see in these cross-sections of bones evidence of pathology, evidence of dinosaur disease, and evidence of dinosaur bones breaking and healing themselves. All of that stuff is available via the inside look at a dinosaur bone.
Analyzing the rock that entombed dinosaur fossils is key to understanding how they were preserved, which is the work of Christie's husband, geologist Ray Rogers.
And I'm there to try to place the discoveries in context, to try to find clues as to where maybe best to look for fossils. We've been pretty lucky in Madagascar. This is typical of the Madagascar material. It is not heavily stained. It's not been invested with iron, with manganese. It doesn't look like a typical fossil. If you didn't know, you might think you're picking up a cow bone today, a bleached cow bone.
I think this piece might be good, or maybe...
The Madagascar bones are so perfectly preserved that Ray and Christie wondered if they might conceal clues about how these dinosaurs lived. To find out, they turned to their colleague, Mary Schweitzer, a paleobiologist whose study of ancient cells and tissues might solve the mystery.
We know the dinosaurs had to have cells, bone cells and muscle cells and gut cells and brain cells,
And that's one of the reasons we can study them, even though they're extinct. I was working on the leg bones, and as I worked, I noticed a bunch of stuff. It was like, you know, this bone, I mean, it's hollow inside. And I was looking at this thing, thinking, this is really interesting.
It was the inside of the T-Rex bone that fascinated Schweitzer, who made thin sections out of it. And in these cross-sections of fossilized bone, she saw something that she and everyone else had thought was impossible. Round structures that looked like red blood cells, dinosaur blood cells.
Inside those channels where the blood vessels would have run were these little round red structures that were all kind of lined up like a train, and they were bright red and translucent. Nobody else had seen anything like that before.
The very idea of blood cells in a 70-million-year-old bone was more than unconventional. It was radical.
Nobody was imagining that dinosaurs might have had preserved soft tissues.
Derek Briggs is curator of invertebrate paleontology at the Peabody Museum at Yale University.
So along comes Mary Schweitzer, and she's starting to look inside dinosaur bones and has made this startling discovery about the presence of red blood cells. What was your initial reaction to that?
Oh, I think the same reaction as everybody's, that this was totally improbable. She'd perhaps misinterpreted the evidence or was exaggerating the potential for what she was seeing.
So skeptical at first?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Paleontology has been around for some time.
One of the oldest professions.
One of the oldest professions. Has anybody else that you know of found similar things inside a bone?
No.
Why do you think it didn't occur to anybody?
Because we have this clear understanding that part of all biological cycles involves decay. I mean, nature is set up to break down that material and recycle it. So it's just improbable that those kinds of very delicate structures would survive, particularly for millions of years.
When you think about it, the laws of chemistry and biology and everything else that we know say that it should be gone. It should be degraded completely.
But Schweitzer kept searching for organic remains where no one had thought to look before. Her mentor is Jack Horner, one of the most famous dinosaur hunters in the world. When his team found another beautifully preserved T-Rex in the remote Montana Badlands, the massive leg bone had to be broken in half for transport, and Schweitzer got to test fragments from deep inside the bone.
The T-Rex bone was filled with a very unique bone tissue. When I turned it, you know, like that and looked down on it and saw this tissue that you can see right there in cross-section, I knew what it was.
It's called medullary tissue, and it's what female birds build up inside their bones as a source of calcium for the eggs they lay. All dinosaurs laid eggs, and it made sense to Schweitzer that female dinosaurs produced the same kind of bone tissue. It looks different from the surrounding bone, and it meant the T-Rex had to be a mother, expecting a clutch of dinosaur eggs.
It was really exciting for me. I thought, there's nothing in my career that could possibly be cooler than being able to identify the first pregnant T-Rex.
No one had ever identified medullary tissue in a dinosaur bone before. But to be sure, Mary Schweitzer directed her lab assistant to soak the bone sample in an acid solution to reveal its structure so she could study it. What happened next would change the way that scientists thought about fossils forever.
As I was looking in the microscope, the medullary material was no longer hard, and what was left was this curled piece of tissue that I was using forceps to try and flatten out. And when I poked into it, it was spongy. It was flexible and soft tissue.
Flexible tissue from a 68-million-year-old dinosaur?
Blood vessels.
There they are.
Transparent, hollow, pliable, flexible, branching blood vessels that contain small, round, red microstructures floating in the vessels. I said, this is not possible. Do it again. We got another piece of bone. We put it in the solution. We waited 2 or 3 or 4 weeks. Looked again, more blood vessels. We must have repeated that with probably 17 or 18 different fragments of bone.
As soon as Schweitzer's discovery of dinosaur soft tissue was published, people thought of one thing: could we get a real-life Jurassic Park? No paleontologist believes we could ever get enough ancient DNA to clone a dinosaur, but could fragments of genetic material be extracted from this new tissue?
I think anything is possible. If there are blood vessels and red blood cells preserved in a dinosaur, I think it's quite possible that there will be DNA there as well.
Even without DNA, proteins from soft tissue could begin to answer real mysteries about dinosaur biology. Evidence of warm blood versus cold blood, whether the large body size of dinosaurs is linked to large cell size. The Rogers have a theory that dinosaur mass deaths in Madagascar might have been caused by water poisoned by algae. This poisoning event wouldn't show up in hard bone, but they might be able to test the theory with dinosaur blood cells.
The structure, I mean, there's a lot of structure there. If there's anything in this tissue that Mary finds that actually can trace a toxin, that would be fantastic. Things like disease, diets, things like that from soft tissues that you can't extract from hard tissue, from true fossil bone.
The hope is that the Madagascar fossils will allow Mary to find more dinosaur tissue. So, Ray and Christy gather fragments of their best preserved fossils. A few days later, the samples arrive at Schweitzer's lab at North Carolina State University. She uses the same technique that yielded soft tissue in the T-Rex bone, soaking the fragments in a mild acid that dissolves away the mineral part of the bone. But will she be able to find the same internal structures in Ray and Christy's fossils?
There's only so much you can know from looking at the outsides of bones, but when there's soft stuff inside, the possibilities become almost endless. This is a single cell.
Through photos from her microscope, Mary hits the jackpot. Pieces of biological history.
Now see, this is really cool. It's what looks like vessels to me, connected together, transparent. And you can see right there, you can see the branch points and stuff.
The Rogers are seeing inside their collection of fossil bone as they've never seen it before. Structures that appear to be the vessels that once carried blood inside a dinosaur's body.
This is hooked together. There's a transparent region.
It's a tube
right
with stuff inside of it.
Branching, hollow, organic material that scientists thought could never be preserved in a dinosaur fossil.
That's amazing. That this is from 65, 70 million year old bone.
It's too early for these structures to reveal details like dinosaurs dying from poisoned water. But dinosaur soft tissue opens a door that no scientist thought even existed until Schweitzer's work changed that assumption.
There's little doubt in my mind that what she has discovered are internal structures in dinosaur bone. And we may look back and say, well, this sort of approach to looking at fossil vertebrate biology has
may I have your attention? You've arrived here today filled with unscientific notions. Notions of gods with magical powers and creators without physical bodies. Well, now is the time to clear your minds of all you've heard before and allow me to fill them with the truth. This, then, is how we actually came to be.
We interrupt this program for a special presentation of the metaphorical, metaphysical, dueling dynamos, the Meta Rustlers.
In the beginning, there was matter. And matter was condensed into one single tiny ball. No, much smaller than that. And then space began to expand, and matter with it. And there was time. This is what we call the Big Bang, a very rapid but highly ordered expansion.
Oh, excuse me, Dr. Atheist?
Yes,
Where did matter come from?
matter is eternal.
Is that what the evidence shows?
That is the only scientifically acceptable view.
What about decay? You know, thermodynamics and all that stuff.
Allow me to continue. Now, wait a
What
minute.
caused the matter to expand, sir?
It simply did.
Well,
Now, when
why was it orderly?
the laws of nature. Now, listen and be instructed.
Well, where did the laws come from?
They were, they are, they always will be.
Sounds like something I've heard about God.
No, this is science. Hydrogen formed, stars formed, galaxies formed, planets formed from stardust until life formed.
Dr. Atheist, what do you mean by life formed?
It formed. There was water and warmth, lightning and gases, amino acids, DNA, the code, mutations and selection. The conditions were right and life was inevitable. Simple enough for even a child to understand.
Oh.
First bacteria, and then trilobites, then fish, then horses, apes, and from apes to Homo sapiens, then to the pinnacle of evolution, college professors.
Wow, Dr. Atheist. Stuff sure forms, doesn't it?
Why, yes, it does.
On its own, matter by chance produced us.
Yes, matter and time, chance and laws, no God required.
But doesn't it take faith to actually believe that?
No, science makes faith unnecessary. Are you questioning science?
No, sir. But I'm having a hard time with the creative powers you see in chance.
Then you fail. Given enough time, chance will do. Plus, science has delivered us from the need of plan and purpose and faith and superstitious beliefs like God. And what's more, science allows no supernatural interference with nature.
But I thought science meant following the evidence to the best conclusion, not avoiding certain conclusions.
What do you mean?
I can see that things have evolved, but it seems like there was a directionality to it, like someone was steering, like there was a plan behind it all.
You mean as though we were the intended result of the process from the beginning?
That's it. The line from hydrogen to us looks intentional, not random.
You're thinking too much. You're taxing yourself. It's laws, time, and chance. No plan needed. Get that into your head.
Well, it's in my head actually, but it's stuck and the wheels are spinning.
I could see why some people might believe there's a mind behind it all. You know, like God?
Silence! Evolutionary biology has shown that we are merely animals, shaped by natural selection for breeding. And you shouldn't trust that randomly altered ape brain of yours with such lofty conclusions.
I'm sorry, sir. I'll stop thinking so much. Whatever you say all the way. But I was wondering, isn't your own brain, as awesome as it is, just a randomly altered ape brain as well? Selected for breeding and all.
Do you expect to pass this class?
I was hoping to, sir.
Do you want a degree in science?
Yes, sir.
Do you want to be published in the scientific journals? Do you want grant money for research?
Yes, sir, and yes.
Then never question Darwin and never mention God. We have a consensus, and it must not be disturbed. You play by our rules, or you don't play at all.
I thought it was getting hot in here.
Caution. Random mutations frequently cause birth defects, growth deformities, cancer, and sickle cell anemia. Before inducing changes, be sure to consult the creator, who knows what he's doing when modifying highly complex and tightly integrated genomes.